Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Truth. I'm your host, the one you love the most, Niall Heston, back with a brand new episode here on The Truth. Back once again with my boy, AJ Ponciano. AJ, how are you doing here today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself now?
I'm doing great as well. Today we're going to be doing Thursday Night Football Week 9 as the Houston Texans travel to take on the New York Jets on Halloween. Ooh, a special Halloween slate of the NFL and a special Halloween episode here on The Truth. I almost just said behind the pack, which would have been pretty embarrassing. But are you dressing up for Halloween?
I'm not sure yet at this point. I'm just not sure.
If you did, what would you dress up as?
I really
The
don't know
New
because
Orleans
it'll
Saints
probably
because they're a joke?
maybe I may dress up like the Vikings franchise because it's been a joke most of your life.
Oh, I'm hilarious. I'm actually
Uh,
hilarious. That was good.
no, I'll probably be a
No, I
referee and just screw over the Saints in 2017 with the no pass interference call. That's probably what I'll do.
oh yeah, that's yeah, wow. That was almost as bad as last Thursday night when the Vikings and the Rams when the Rams, I don't know who it was, sacked their Sam Darnold in the end zone and completely grabbed his face mask. No, the pass interference one, like I think really was an advocate to bring replay into the NFL. And kind of yeah, that was especially the stakes of that game, man. And is that the year they won the Super Bowl or am I tripping? No. That
For the
was not
Rams,
2017. No, I don't know
no,
what
that
I'm
was the
thinking.
year
That was
the
not.
Rams ran into our wide receiver when the ball was still in the air and there was no call. I
Yes.
forgot who
Okay.
won the Super Bowl
Sorry.
that year. It was like 17, 18, something like that.
I might have to research that. Maybe, oh, you know what? Was that the Patriots Rams when the Patriots won like 10-3?
I think so. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
something like
because
that. It
I'm
was a
pretty
really
sure the
boring
Rams
Super
made.
Bowl.
Yeah, yes, that was one of the most boring Super Bowls of all time. Yeah, I completely forgot about that. Like Jared Goff and the Rams back when he was on the Rams and they lost to the Patriots like 10-3. Yeah, completely. Wow. Well, yeah, anyways, so bad calls. It's Halloween, so maybe they'll terrorize your dreams once again. But anyways, we have a special Halloween episode here on The Truth as we give you guys our start, sit, sleepers, and busts for Week Nine's Thursday night game on Halloween night as the Texans travel to take on the Jets. With the Jets, very dismal season. Texans just lost to Stephon Diggs for the year as well. Kind of, I guess, a fitting game to say the least for a Halloween slate. Two teams that kind of have some demons that are just dragging at them right now. But anyways, enough of this Halloween demon talk. I don't really know what got into me. But anyways, we have our starts, sits, sleepers, and busts. Why don't you go ahead and give me your starts for this game?
First one is Joe Mixon. I mean, Joe Mixon has had volume basically every game that he hasn't been injured. Uh, he's just been great. And one of the things also with the Jets, their pass defense has been solid, but their run defense has been pretty subpar. I mean, it's right in the middle for the most part, lying just over 1,000 yards so far in the first 8 games. But one of the big things is that they have allowed more than a rushing touchdown every game. They're tied for third or fourth most, 10 rushing touchdowns allowed so far up to this year. And I'm calling it now. If you guys are a fan, or not fancy, if you guys do prop bets or whatever, I'm taking Joe Mixon over anytime touchdown. I think that he gets in. I think it will be pretty easy. I think once they get down to the goal line, especially with looks like going to be no Nico Collins this week. Then obviously like you mentioned no Diggs. Once they get down to that red zone, they don't really have a true red zone threat. Maybe Schultz. Tank Dell's more of that deep field threat. I think they may hand the ball off to Joe Mixon 3 straight times. I wouldn't be too surprised if that happened. And then, like I said, no Nico, no Diggs. Tank Dell's more that stretch the field weapon. I love Dalton Schultz in this matchup. I do like the linebackers there, their coverage linebackers that they have, but Schultz is going to be really the only reliable weapon there. Tank Dell's been so up and down this year. Granted, he's been very behind Diggs and Nico for the most part of the year, but outside of that, I mean, Schultz has been pretty consistent. I think this is where he has a big game. He's going to have a lot of opportunities. I think this is a game that Stroud's actually going to throw for a lot of yards. I think he may throw over 300 yards in this game. And I get it, they have Sauce Gardner and a pretty good pass defense, but at some point they're going to hone in on Joe Mixon and try to stop the entire run game, and CJ Stroud's got to do something. So I really like Schultz here. I could see him having 7 catches for like 75 yards in this game.
So I'm gonna go with three starts. The first being Tank Dell. I feel like every week I'm like bust Tank Dell, like he's gonna be terrible. But Now he kind of steps into an interesting role. Obviously, most likely no Nico Collins, if I'm not mistaken. Obviously, no Stephon Diggs with a torn ACL. Seems to be that he's the next man up. And I felt like he was going to be the next man up regardless throughout this NFL season. It just has not been the case for him thus far. Obviously, that Tank Dell on your team, 89.7% of leagues. So he's not one of those guys that you can consistently pick up just because his ADP was so high. But I think this is a prime opportunity for him to kind of get his feet wet as a wide receiver one, wide receiver for sure, wide receiver two on this Texans team, and kind of reinvent his name from where he was last year before his devastating injury. Yeah, obviously Sauce Gardner, their cornerbacks for the Jets are really solid, so it's going to be difficult to kind of get open and get those receptions. But at the end of the day, CJ Stroud is going to be looking for a guy like Tank Dell to kind of step up to the plate and be that I guess leader and be that stat machine that he can be. So I think the situation's great, even going up against a guy like Sauce Gardner or the Jets secondary. Secondly, I'm gonna go with Devontae Adams. Kind of weird to think Devontae Adams is the 59th position ranked wide receiver. I understand he missed 3 weeks on the year, but still, besides week two, has not really been super consistent. In his 2 games with the Jets, 6 points, and then last week 9.4. I think this is for sure an opportunity for Devontae Adams to kind of break through and be a successful wide receiver for the Jets. Obviously, Rodgers and Adams have not really established that connection. It's kind of interesting to see because the Jets obviously were a team that had Garrett Wilson, had Tyler Conklin, a couple other weapons to throw to. Now you kind of add Devontae Adams in the mix and kind of see where he falls in as far as receptions and productivity. It's just kind of been up in the air right now. But I think this is definitely a good bounce back game for Devontae Adams. I think this is the game that he really breaks through, gets his first touchdown with the Jets. The Jets are 2-6, obviously not at all where they'd expect to be, basically out of the postseason unless they make a miraculous run. It's got to start somewhere. I think Devontae Adams has the opportunities. He needs to be successful. I think he's in a good situation just being with Aaron Rodgers. I think this is the week that he officially kind of breaks onto the scene and surprises a lot of people, or maybe not surprises a lot of people, but kind of gets his name back into the mix of a guy that can be an elite player. And then finally, as you mentioned, Joe Mixon, I feel like quietly he's had a really good season. Again, quietly because he missed 3 weeks, weeks 3 to week 5. But basically every week he's been on the field besides week 2. He's had more than 23 fantasy points, 26.8, 27.2, 26.4, and 23.4. Yeah, he's gotten a touchdown in all those games, but the biggest thing that looks out to me is 30 carries, 25 carries, 25 carries. Reception wise, 3 receptions, 4 receptions, 32 yards. I mean, everything you ask out of a running back, Joe Mixon has. And I think that going into the year, there was a lot of skepticism, including from me, where I just didn't trust Joe Mixon. But he is the all out, be out running back for the Texans. You lose Stephon Diggs, you've already lost Nico Collins. And you've seen the impact without Nico Collins that Joe Mixon's had on that backfield and really on that offense as a whole. So I think he's an absolutely must start. If for some reason you're not starting him, but a guy that I guess could be mentioned as a starter just because even though he's had a good year, like he's kind of, I feel like kind of been under the radar. What about sits?
I only have one sit, and it's going to be Tyler Conklin. And one of the big things that the Texans are able to do is hold tight ends under 40 yards. I was just looking back the last couple weeks, and every single tight end that they have faced hasn't had over 40 yards. Now, a couple of them had touchdowns, but it's the Lions. They've consistently been around 2-3 catches, 33, 34 yards. Like I said, touchdown here and there. Last week only gave up one reception to a tight end. I think it was one reception to 4 yards. Grant, they were playing the Colts and Anthony Richardson didn't play that well, but they've proven they're able to guard that tight end position very well. And like you said, Devontae Adams, I'm expecting him to have a good game there. Garrett Wilson, we can expect, 6 catches out of him, 65, 70 yards pretty consistently. Breece Hall has really taken a step forward these last couple weeks. Braylon Allen, I really like him. Hint, he is going to be a sleeper of mine for this week. But Conklin, there's so many guys in front of him. I mean, even Alan Lazard has had a solid year up to this point. I just named off 5 guys I'd rather have the ball in their hands than Tyler Conklin. He's kind of just out there because Aaron Rodgers really likes him. And I get it, every once in a while he'll have a game where he'll give you 15 to 17 fantasy points. I just don't expect it here. I don't expect the volume to be there. And like I said, they've given up less than 40, or they haven't given up 40 yards in the last 4 to 5 weeks from what I checked. And I want to say they only give up 2 touchdowns within those last 5 weeks to tight ends.
The only sit that I really have, and it's not really a sit, it's just kind of a mention, is CJ Stroud. The only reason why I mention it is because his 2 worst games in fantasy have been on the road. Most recently, week 7 at Green Bay, 10 for 21 for 86 yards. Do I think that's going to happen again? No, but it is potentially something to monitor. As well as that, Minnesota had 9.8 fantasy points, 20 for 31, 215, one touchdown, two interceptions. I don't think you're sitting CJ Stroud on your fantasy team, but I wanted to make mention that he typically doesn't do well on the road, especially for teams that are looking for wins like the New York Jets are and hunting those wins. And really, I think as a whole, the Jets defense is one of the best defenses in the NFL. The offense has just not really stepped up to the plate for them. So that could cause CJ Stroud troubles on top of Stephon Diggs being gone with injury, obviously Nico Collins out, and having some younger guys like Tank Dell and an established running game kind of carry you to the promised land and win this game here. What about sleepers?
Braylon Allen, I think, is really the only sleeper I have here. 50 carries on the year, 49, 187 yards, two touchdowns. This seems like a Braylon Allen game where he gets a touchdown. He gets 7, 8 rush attempts for 35, 40 yards. Doesn't have a great game here, but just has a solid game. And I think that's the only reason why is because I think they're going to get to Bruce Hall early on, and they're going to go to a different type of runner and Braylon out a little bit of a bigger back. Brees has had a lot of this moments that we've seen this year where he'll get stopped for like two straight drives, and then they'll go to Braylon for one or two drives or 1.5 drives, and then they'll go back to Brees because he's more of that better receiving back. I think that's what happens in this game. The run defense for the Texans have been pretty solid this year, so I expect that to happen. I expect them to hone in on Brees and let their corners play some man one-on-one on Devontae and Garrett Wilson, and then they go to Braylon, like I said, for a drive and a half, and that's when they go down and score a touchdown. People are going to be like, oh, Brees sucks, and Braylon should be the starting running back, because look, they went down and scored a touchdown. I just think that they're going to figure it out. Braylon, again, long shot, but I think he does potentially score a touchdown, gets 7, 8 carries, 35 yards. Again, not something you're too excited for, but if you're in a deep league, that's production that you'll take out of a young running back. Or if you're in a dynasty league, having a young running back like that get playing time in a game where they're playing a good team, I mean, that's just all positive steps forward.
Yeah, so for me, I mean, looking at this, I guess teams as a whole, I have three sleepers. The first being Aaron Rodgers, kind of a quiet 17 fantasy points last week. I mean, obviously 21 in week 3 against New England, 17 in week 6 against Buffalo, 13 against Pittsburgh in week 7 on Sunday night. And then last week on the road, 17.3 against the Patriots. Again, he's not probably going to get too much higher than that, but a guy that if you get 17 points out of your quarterback, depending on the strength of your roster as a whole, you probably call it a win because that's pretty solid, especially for a guy like Aaron Rodgers, age plus 40 season. I mean, this is a guy that obviously is one of the best quarterbacks of all time, one of the best quarterbacks for Green Bay, has kind of struggled to get his niche going in New York. Now, it didn't help that he missed the entirety of last season because of injury. That obviously hurt his case tremendously. But looking at Aaron Rodgers as a whole, I think there's a prime opportunity for him to have success this week. I think it starts with this matchup going into the Texans and then kind of moving forward. But again, a guy that not many people are talking about. He's rostered in not too many leagues, 56.7% of leagues, so he's out there for the taking. The biggest question mark is how comfortable do you feel with Aaron Rodgers? I think if you're weak at the quarterback position, particularly with guys like Dak and Anthony Richardson starting, that Rodgers could be a guy that integrates himself very well into your lineup and kind of establishes a set of consistency now that he's kind of shaken off the rust fully from his Achilles injury. Secondly, I'm going to go with Dalton Schultz. Kind of hard to believe, but Dalton Schultz has not racked more than 10 fantasy points on the season. He doesn't even have a single receiving touchdown on the season, but I feel like he's had production nonetheless. He's gotten games of 4 for 34, 4 for 27, 4 for 52, just kind of waiting to break through that mold there. And now the Texans are out with their top two receivers in Stephon Diggs and Nico Collins. And hey, the last time I saw this success happen was last week when the Buccaneers were without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Who they target? The tight end, Kadon, who had 9 catches for 81 yards and 2 touchdowns. I see something similar in Dalton Schultz. I think Dalton Schultz is a very efficient tight end, obviously with Dallas, and now I guess kind of waiting to kind of break through as well for the Texans. I think longevity-wise, Dalton Schultz is a guy that could be utilized really moving forward, not only for the Texans, but not only for the Texans in this matchup, but moving forward. And with Nico Collins potentially coming back at some point, you never know how fully healthy he's going to be and what kind of issues or limitations that he may have. So I think this is a week where he gets, honestly, a hot take. I'm going to say 2 touchdowns this year, or this week. Well, maybe this year. 2 touchdowns this week against the New York Jets team that's obviously struggling. And on top of that, I don't think CJ Stroud's going to really have a desire to throw into that Jets secondary with those quarterbacks who will kind of dump it off to his running back slash tight end. And finally, I'm going to go with the running back in Braylon Allen. Last week, 12 carries, which was his career best, and 32 yards for 1 touchdown. Hasn't really been involved in the passing game as much since that Week 3 game against New England, but still a really good running back. Aaron Rodgers has success when these guys get really combined 30, 35 carries, and I think he could be a deep sleeper, especially in those 14, 16 team leagues where people are kind of trying to, breathe in air at the claw to find someone that kind of sticks, someone that's able to have some consistent success. And that could definitely be Braylon Allen, especially in this matchup going into New York. What about any busts?
I'm gonna go with Tank Dell. I think you start him because of the opportunity that he has. But you also gotta realize Tank Dell, he's gonna be guarded by Sauce Gardner essentially the entire game because there is no Nico Collin, there is no Stephon Diggs to take him. Like I said earlier in this episode, Tank Dell's been a very streaky player, and yes, you sat behind Nico and Stephon Diggs as those two being the main targets there, but Sauce Gardner is a different animal. I mean, he's the same, very similar to Pat Surtain. And I always feel like whenever Pat Surtain goes against wide receiver, I always have him as a bust that week because Surtain doesn't give up that many receptions. He doesn't give up that many yards. He barely gives up touchdowns. I want to say he's only given up 1 touchdown so far this year. One of the big things is that Tank Dell and him are going to go back and forth. Sauce is able to cover those guys. And I wouldn't be too surprised if they run a lot of zone there with a 2 safety high look to keep Tank Dell under having to run those underneath routes, not letting him stretch the field too much. So that's why I really like guys like Schultz, even John Mechie. I forgot to mention him. I maybe a little bit of a stretch there for a sleeper, but Tank Dell, I'm still starting him because of the opportunity there, but I would be very wary on his big plays. I would expect him to have a couple more smaller plays here. I wouldn't expect to get one of those notifications that he has a 60-yard touchdown. And the second I have Aaron Rodgers. Like I said, he had 17 points last week. Pretty quiet, but it's quiet because he didn't really have the best game, and the Jets really didn't do that well against the Patriots. Now they're going up against a better defense, a better pass defense with the Texans. I mean, we always talk about how good the Jets' pass defense is. The Texans have only given up 1,500 yards up to this point, which is the sixth best in the NFL. Now they have given up 16 pass touchdowns. That is a little bit scary, but they also have 8 interceptions, which I want to say is tied for numbers 4 or 5 in the NFL, right up there. I mean, they've been good on the passing side of the ball almost all year, and he does have the weapons. But again, we saw it against the Patriots, who haven't been that good all year. Wasn't really that good on the defense side last year, and now they're going up against a much better defense. I just maybe touchdown and interception, like 250 yards, 275 yards. I think it's a pretty realistic outcome for Rodgers.
So my only bust this week is John Mechie, and I know you mentioned him a little bit. I was listening to again another podcast today, and a lot of people were really excited about John Mechie, and obviously a really tough story for him dealing with leukemia and coming back on the field. Really hasn't kind of connected the way that people were expecting him to connect. I think there is still hope, obviously, for him, but I don't think he's necessarily going to make an impact right away. He did finally, with the injury, get his first kind of real, I guess, target share of 4 targets, 3 catches, 29 yards. I just see them really, or CJ Stroud really integrating Joe Mixon in the passing game, as well as Dalton Schultz and maybe Tank Dell and not Mechie. Who knows though? John Mechie could be a guy that could kind of skyrocket, but he's only rostered in 0.1% of leagues, which is not to say that you can't pick him up. But I think you definitely have to exercise caution and really kind of see what he does in this week against New York. If he does do something that's relatively consistent, relatively good, then maybe you consider moving it forward with John Mechie. But other than that, I think you would kind of avoid him. And I think a lot of people are excited to see what he's going to be able to do, which I'm going to curious to see what his roster percentage is going to be when waivers clear for us tomorrow, and see how that progresses or declines after this matchup. But this matchup against the Jets will definitely tell a lot there. Do you have a game prediction?
Yeah, I think this one's going to be pretty middle of the pack. Maybe a little bit on the higher end. I'm going to go 35-23. A little bit on the higher end. I think the Texans and the run game really explode here. I think Rodgers, like I said, 1 touchdown. I think a rushing touchdown by Braylon in this game is really all they get on the touchdown side, and just a lot of field goals there. On the offense side, again, Joe Mixon, I'm taking anytime touchdown on that prop, and Again, Stroud 2 touchdowns, probably not an interception because he doesn't really turn the ball over that much. He's kind of like young Rodgers in that way, where he doesn't have many interceptions. But yeah, I think a little bit more on the higher side, at least on for the Texans. But I just don't really see Rodgers getting it going again. I mean, he was my dark horse MVP favorite, and it is not looking good. I'm almost looking like you with my quarterback predictions.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Jets winning this game at home, 20-14. I think it's gonna be a good game. I think both sides obviously have been slacking a little bit. Obviously the Jets have been slacking more. If they lose this game, I mean, I don't know what's gonna happen because this is a team that should not be 2-6, at least to their standards. They should never have fired Robert Saleh. Terrible decision on their parts. They get what they deserve. And I'm a big Aaron Rodgers hater for obvious reasons. So I would like to see them lose, but they're at home. Obviously, Jets fans are some of the most loyal fans out there, and I think they come away with a 20-14 victory. Thank you guys for listening to another episode here on The Truth. If you guys did enjoy it, make sure you follow The Truth on Twitter at The Truth as one to stay up to date with the latest information regarding the truth, including podcast dates, podcast uploads, and other important information you don't want to miss. Make sure you guys also follow The Truth on Instagram and TikTok at the.tt.truth. Are you looking to find a drink that offers peak hydration, raises your energy levels, speeds up your recovery, and keeps your mind sharp to focus and memory? Look no further than Acid Rainwater. I'm excited to partner with Bloodline Sports, AZ, and Acid Rainwater, which focuses on peak hydration and productivity while also maintaining ecosystem-friendly product. Use code HESSON15, that's HESSON15, for 15% off every purchase. As always, I'm your host, the one you love the most, Niall Hesson, joined once again by AJ Ponciano. Take care and good night.